Picture this, the year is 1066. A comet blazes across the sky, a sight many took as a terrible omen. And they were right. This was the year that would shatter a kingdom, end an era, and forge a new nation in fire and blood. This is the story of two men, one throne, and the battle that changed England forever, the Battle of Hastings. Our story begins with a deathbed promise, or at least, that's what one side claimed. In January 1066, King Edward, the Confessor of England, died without a direct heir. This created a massive power vacuum. On his deathbed, Edward supposedly pointed to his most powerful nobleman, Harold Godwinson, and named him successor. The Witan, England's Council of Wise Men, agreed, and Harold was crowned King of England almost immediately. But across the English Channel, another man was fuming. This was William, the Duke of Normandy. William claimed that years earlier, Edward had promised the throne to him. Even more, he alleged that Harold Godwinson himself had once been shipwrecked in Normandy and had sworn a sacred oath on holy relics to support William's claim to the English throne. When news of Harold's coronation reached him, William saw it as the ultimate betrayal. He wasn't just angry, he was a man on a mission, backed by the Pope himself, who declared Harold an oathbreaker. William began assembling a massive invasion fleet, a force the likes of which hadn't been seen in generations. So, we have King Harold in England, trying to secure his new kingdom, and Duke William in Normandy, preparing to take it by force. But wait, there's a third player in this deadly Game of Thrones. Enter Harald Hardrada, the fearsome King of Norway, a living Viking legend who believed he also had a claim to the English crown through a dusty old agreement, and who was whispering in Hardrada's ear, urging him to invade. None other than Tostig Godwinson, King Harold's own exiled and bitter brother. So, King Harold of England is in an impossible position. He knows William is coming from the south. He now knows Hardrada and his own brother are coming from the north. He has to defend his kingdom on two fronts against two of the most formidable warriors of the age. In early September, the winds finally favored the Vikings. Harold Hardrada and Tostig landed in the north of England with a massive army. They crushed the first English forces sent against them at the Battle of Fulford. The news reached King Harold in the south, where he was anxiously waiting for William's invasion. This is where Harold Godwinson shows his true mettle. In an incredible feat of leadership and logistics, he force-marched his elite army, his housecarls, nearly 200 miles north in just 4 days. It was a lightning-fast response that no one expected. On September 25th, he caught the Norwegian army completely by surprise at a place called Stamford Bridge. The Vikings had left their armor with their ships, thinking they were just going to a peaceful negotiation. The battle that followed was a brutal, bloody slaughter. Both Harold Hardrada and Tostig Godwinson were killed. The Viking invasion was utterly annihilated. It was a stunning victory for Harold, a triumph that should have secured his name in legend. But Harold and his exhausted army had no time to celebrate. Just 3 days after their incredible victory, the worst possible news arrived. The winds in the English Channel had finally changed. William the Conqueror and his Norman army had landed at Pevensey on the south coast of England. They were unopposed. Imagine Harold's situation. His men were battered, bruised, and weary from a forced march and a savage battle. Now, they had to turn around and march another 250 miles south to face a fresh, well-equipped, and cavalry-heavy Norman army. Many of his advisors urged him to wait, to gather more men from the shires and let the Normans weaken themselves foraging for supplies. On October 14, 1066, the two armies finally met. Harold chose his ground carefully. He positioned his army atop a ridge known then as Senlac Hill, about 7 miles from Hastings. His strategy was simple and effective: the shield wall. The Anglo-Saxon soldiers would lock their shields together, creating an almost impenetrable barrier of wood and steel, bristling with spears. For the Normans, who relied on cavalry charges, this was a nightmare. They would have to charge uphill into a wall of death. Then came the infantry, slogging their way up the hill only to be repulsed by the steadfast English line. Finally, William sent in his prized knights, the shock troops of the medieval world. Again and again, the Norman cavalry charged up the slope, crashing against the shield wall with a sound like thunder, only to be thrown back, men and horses tumbling down the hill in a chaotic mess. For hours, the battle raged, and the English shield wall held firm. The Normans were becoming demoralized. At one point, a rumor spread through their ranks that Duke William himself had been killed. Panic began to set in. Seeing his army on the verge of collapse, William did something incredibly brave. He rode along the front lines, took off his helmet, and shouted, "Look at me." These Englishmen broke their shield wall formation, chasing what they thought was a fleeing enemy. It was a trap, perhaps an accidental one at first, but one William quickly learned to exploit. He wheeled his knights around and cut the pursuing English to pieces on the flat ground. William saw his opportunity. He ordered his knights to perform a series of feigned retreats. They would charge the hill, pretend to break and run, and lure more of the English to break formation and chase them. It was a risky, difficult tactic, but it started to work. Small gaps began to appear in the mighty shield wall as overeager English soldiers were tempted down the slope to their doom. As the sun began to set, the battle still hung in the balance. The English were exhausted, their numbers dwindling, but the core of Harold's elite housecarls still held the ridge. William needed a way to break them once and for all. He ordered his archers to change their tactics. Instead of firing directly at the shield wall, they were to aim high, to drop their arrows down from above, like deadly rain, behind the wall of shields. This was the turning point. The arrows rained down on the less armored men behind the front line, and then a one-in-a-million shot changed history. An arrow, fired high into the sky, came down and struck King Harold Godwinson in the eye. He staggered, mortally wounded, and fell. According to legend, he tried to pull the arrow out, but was then cut down by Norman knights who broke through the line. The death of their king shattered the morale of the Anglo-Saxons. Their leadership was gone. The shield wall, which had held for so long, finally broke. The last of Harold's loyal housecarls gathered around their fallen king's body and fought to the last man, a heroic but futile final stand. By nightfall, the battle was over. The field was a scene of carnage. The Anglo-Saxon army was destroyed, and their king was dead. William the Conqueror marched to London and was crowned King of England in Westminster Abbey on Christmas Day, 1066. But his victory at Hastings was just the beginning. The English people did not simply accept their new Norman ruler. For years, William faced brutal rebellions across the country. His response was ruthless, culminating in the harrying of the north, where he systematically destroyed land and livestock, leading to a famine that killed over 100,000 people. The Norman conquest was not just a change of king, it was a complete societal upheaval. The English aristocracy was almost entirely replaced by Normans. Language changed, with French becoming the language of the court and government, infusing thousands of new words into what would become modern English. The very landscape changed, as the Normans built hundreds of stone castles to dominate the countryside. England was tied irrevocably to continental Europe. The Battle of Hastings wasn't just a battle. It was the painful birth of a new England. It was the end of the Anglo-Saxon age and the dawn of the Norman era. The actions of these men, Harold, William, and even Hardradan, that fateful day in 1066, set in motion a chain of events that shaped the language we speak, the laws we follow, and the history of the world, all decided in a single day of hellfire on a Sussex hillside. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey back in time fascinating, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more epic stories from history. See you next time.